Welcome to the Her Vibe is Pretty podcast, where you'll be guided on how to step up into your evolved woman,
design your dream life, and start living it. Let's get vibey.
What's up, Pretty Vibe Tribe? Welcome back to another week of the Her Vibe is Pretty podcast. Today, we have a very special guest on the show. I know you guys are going to absolutely love her and everything that she has to say, because taking care of our physical health is a really important part of our earthly experiences. And it's not something we talk about too often on this show. And that is what Hadlee is here to talk about today. But before we get into it, I wanted to let you all know that my signature course, Diet Culture Dropout, is open for enrollment. Now, a few of you have already figured this out because I have had about 5 of you sneak in already, which is super exciting. But for those of you who didn't know, I wanted to let you know that the doors are open. You can enroll in Diet Culture Dropout. So if you haven't heard me talk about this course before, it is basically 12 weeks to overcoming binge and emotional eating. You guys know, especially if you've been listening to the show for a while, that I struggled with binge and emotional eating for a really long time, and also numbing out with other destructive vices like social media and alcohol and Netflix. I was living this mundane life in these vicious cycles of numbing, suppressing, and avoiding my feelings with food and other vices. And it really took a toll on my overall quality of life. So I created this course specifically for those who are looking to overcome these destructive vices that are keeping them small and in their patterns that are no longer serving them. So I wanted to just let my members and clients speak for themselves, because I've had a few people going through this for a while now. And here are just some of the testimonials that I have received so far. These are like 2 profound ones out of many, and I will for sure be sharing more in the months to come. But this first one is from one of my members, Ariana. She says, "My life has changed so much. A few weeks ago, I was still panicking about calories, looking at my abs every day, working out, despairing when I didn't look the way I thought I would. But now, and I have only the 3rd module behind me, I feel so much better. I have lost weight. I am happy to eat what I want and when I want. I do sports, but without pressure and full of joy." BTFAR, we call that the BitFAR framework. You guys have heard a little bit about that on the show. She says, "Bitfar is so amazing, and I just love to keep telling myself that I am enough, loved, and worthy. I'm happy to communicate with my inner child and listen to her. Today, I was spinning around barefoot in the garden like a 4-year-old, laughing and running around like crazy. It was wonderful. I am so looking forward to the coming weeks and modules. Thank you, Sarah." You guys, that was her message to me after 3 weeks of this course. You all deserve to feel the way that Ariana feels. You all deserve to spin around barefoot in the garden like 4-year-olds, laughing and running. Like, that is what life is all about. Another really profound one comes from another member, Kevin. I'm actually not going to share the entire testimonial today, but I will share half of it because of how profound his words are. And I can just feel the truth and the joy underneath them. So he says, "I knew I needed something new and something to rekindle this relationship with myself. Lo and behold, Diet Culture Dropout was staring me down in the face. Did I have an emotional and binge eating disorder? I didn't know. Did I have a poor relationship with myself? I didn't really think I did. Was I affected by trauma, big and small, from my childhood? Nah, probably not. Why in the world would I still be holding on to this? How could that even affect me to this day? I'm here to tell you it's there. Whether you're aware of it or not, there are events, people, and trauma that have subconsciously altered our paths. In the 3 short months, I have been able to uncover and unmask so many different things I never even knew about myself, my childhood, my mind/body/soul, and how those people around us project. I have learned to control my own emotions, how to feel through them, how to handle tough conversations with myself, how to hold myself accountable, how to hold others accountable as well. This journey is so fucking fun. I am daily learning to love every ounce of myself, even the parts that society told me was wrong, that society told me I would go to hell for, the parts of me that I felt was unlovable and unworthy of light and joy. I cry when I want to. I breathe through stuck emotions. I fucking love myself. And if you can put a dollar amount on how much you'd spend to and through to honor and love yourself, you're nuts. I'm so honored and blessed to have such an incredible mentor, friend, and lifelong sister to guide me through this journey. Woo! I have all the feels over here listening to those. So, you guys, if those words resonate with you at all, if you are ready to finally overcome emotional eating, binge eating, or whatever destructive vice you are relying on for joy and happiness, this course is for you. You can find and create that blissful, joyful, peaceful, expansive sensation in your body on your own without anything outside of you. And that is what this course teaches you to do. So I'm going to leave the link for that in the show notes of this episode. So if that's intriguing to you, go check it out. And if it feels like a good fit for where you're at in life right now, join us. We would absolutely love to have you. The community that we have via our Facebook group is so supportive, profound. We are in there every week communicating, holding each other accountable. We do monthly challenges. I do monthly live Q&As. It's just a very wholesome program that will help you completely change your life. If you're ready to take the stuff that we talk about on the podcast to another level, we skim the surface here. So if you're ready to go deeper into all of it and actually embody it, this course is for you. All right, so let's move on. I am so excited to introduce our guest today, Hadlee Garrison. She is a peer of mine. She is also from the same hometown as I am. She is a health coach and she's the founder of Happy Healthy with Hadlee. She's a health and lifestyle coach who helps people feel better in their bodies, have more energy on a day-to-day basis, become more confident in themselves, cultivate a better relationship with food, and become less stressed and more joyful in their day-to-day lives. Hadlee graduated from the University of Michigan with a BS in Biopsychology, Cognition, and Neuroscience, and with a master's in Public Health and Health Behavior and Health Education. And she is also a certified health coach. Hadlee's online program called Happy Healthy Habits combines the concepts of behavioral science, step-by-step habits for optimal health, and group dynamics to help her clients make effective, sustainable, and impactful changes in their health and in their lives. This conversation that Hadlee and I had was so good and even inspired me to start creating some new habits that Hadlee recommends. She specializes in something called Ayurveda, which you'll hear us talk a lot about. But Ayurvedic health is super great for healing gut health issues and hormone imbalances and creating energy in the body. And it's really cool too, because we get into the 3 types of body types that are on planet Earth. There's Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, which you'll hear us talk about and explain on the show. But basically, everybody, when we're born, we are born into one of those body types. And whatever body type you are, kind of shapes the way that your health and wellness looks physically, mentally, and emotionally. So I'm super excited for you guys to learn all about it. You're just going to love Hadlee, and make sure you check her out on Instagram. She has so much goodness to offer there as well. So let's go to the show. Okay, Hadlee, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on. I'm so excited about this conversation today.
Thank you for having me. I've been really excited to talk to you. I mean, obviously we talk all the time
Yeah.
and we have the best conversations. So I'm really excited to share those conversations
Me
with
too.
the
You
podcast
guys,
listeners.
Hadlee and I last week, we were sitting at this cute little healthy cafe that's in the town that we're living in right now. And we were having a conversation and I'm like, I wish I had my mic right now recording
Yeah.
all of this because it would have been such a good podcast episode. So Hadlee, something that I was reflecting on like right before we hopped on this call is how you and I met. So for those of you listening, Hadlee and I are peers and we're friends. And I was like thinking about it and I'm like, how did we meet? And we are both from the same area. So like the high schools we went to are close, and my little sister and her little sister actually went to the same high school. And so we like knew of each other, but I'm pretty sure that we actually connected through Instagram.
Yeah, we totally did.
Like through the DMs. And this is
Yep.
so good for our listeners to hear, because I tell our listeners all the time, like there's so much that's the beauty of social media sometimes, is being able to connect with like-minded people. Because Hadlee, I'm sure that you know this and you've experienced this yourself, but as you get onto this path of like personal development and expansion and growth and health and well-being, not just with the body, but with the mind and the soul, you start evolving and you kind of start phasing some people out. Like your friends who
Mhm.
used to be like your best friends from high school or from college, they don't necessarily click with you anymore like, they used to. And it might feel a little vibe to hang out with them. And so we are always talking to our listeners about like what to do about that. And you guys, Hadlee and I, and just like I have a friend Alicia too, who has been on our podcast a couple of times, and our listeners know like same thing with her, same situation. We literally
Mhm.
connected through social media. We started as internet friends, and now
Yes.
here we are meeting up, having coffee dates, and staying in touch virtually as well. So just goes to show you guys, like, I mean, be bold on Instagram and be bold on the social medias and on the internet. And if there's somebody who you see live in life and you're like, ooh, they seem cool, I mean, reach out to them and start a friendship.
Yes,
You never know where it
I
could
love it. That reminds me of my mom used to always tell me this quote, be bold and mighty forces will come to your aid.
Ooh.
And I love it because it's like law of attraction and it's like, taking aligned action. It's all of the things.
Totally.
But my mom used to always tell me that, like growing up, and I was a theater kid, so I'd write it on like the mirrors that we would have in the dressing rooms and stuff. And it's like, yeah, be bold. And then it won't be such a lonely path, because sometimes it is.
Yeah, it can feel like that
Yeah.
at first, definitely, right? Because as you start to grow and
Hmm.
evolve and you start to
Totally.
feel, super pulled or called to like those people you used to surround yourself with, it can be.
Right.
So, I mean, yeah, reach out. And also our listeners know too, your vibe attracts your tribe always. So as
Hmm.
long as you trust that your vibe and your vibration, your energy will attract the right people into your life, it will. And Hadlee and I are living proof of that.
Yes, I love it.
Okay, so you guys, as I shared with you in the introduction, Hadlee is a health coach and the founder of Happy Healthy with Hadlee. And Hadlee, something that I really want you to bring to the show today, because it's so intriguing to me, but I feel like not a lot of people know a lot about it, but this is your specialty, is Ayurveda. Am I even saying that right?
So it's Ayurveda.
Ayurveda.
A
Okay.
ton of people say it that way, and yeah, it's
Ayurveda. Okay. Well,
Ayurveda.
I
Yeah,
might slaughter that throughout this entire episode, but
it's okay.
Ayurveda. So, isn't it the oldest healthcare system in the world?
It's thousands of years old, actually.
Wow.
It's so wild. Yeah. So essentially it comes from, so it's like the sister science to yoga. A lot of times is kind of how it's explained in our Western world, because we know what yoga is. And essentially, essentially thousands of years ago, ancient Indian people created this healthcare system that really shows us how to have a human body and how to thrive. And the thing that I really, really love about it is that it's not just thriving in our bodies or in like our body minds, which we're now, that's kind of trendy now, is like the mind body connection, but it's actually like how to thrive and live in this world with a thriving like body, mind, and spirit.
Mm.
And so they're like, their definition of health is fasta. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, but I'm trying my best.
It's okay. On the Her
um,
Vibe is Pretty podcast, we make up words all the time. Like
love it.
whatever comes out, comes out. And you guys, one of my favorite parts about Hadlee, not to interrupt you, but she's part of the Pretty Vibe tribe. So that's pretty
Oh
cool.
yes. Oh yes, I definitely am. I've listened to like, I think all of them.
Okay, anyways, keep going. So
So yeah.
Fusta, Fusta, Fusta.
Yes, fasta is the word for health in Ayurveda. It's a Sanskrit word. That's basically, so you can think of Sanskrit as like sort of like how Latin is not really like used as like a language that people speak now, but that's kind of like in India. Sanskrit is that language that's kind of like evolved over time to different languages. So anyway, the word's fasta means basically health, and it really means to be seated in the self. And the other definition, so there's like a few different ways to um, to to see what spasta is, and it's like if you are healthy and you have clear channels. So, like the digestive system is super big in Ayurveda. And if you have bright, clear eyes, I love that one. And then like another one is if you feel blissful, like that is what health is. There are a couple other things. But like all of those things play a role in our health. And like in the modern Western, healthcare system, it's like the absence of disease. And so that's kind of why I was so drawn to Ayurveda, probably like 10 years ago now, like 8 years ago, maybe. But that was kind of why I was like, they know what they're talking about. And like, it just resonated so much with me. So I went to a retreat with my mom at the Chopra Center in California, right near San Diego in Carlsbad, which I actually just lived in San Diego this past winter. And it was really cool. We went up to Carlsbad and I kind of showed my fiance Todd around and stuff. So anyway, so that was kind of my introduction into Ayurveda, was at the Chopra Center with my mom. And it's been awesome learning about it since then and diving in.
It's so cool. So I feel like I think most of you guys know that my background is in holistic health as well. I went to the Institute for Integrative Nutrition to be a integrative nutrition health coach, so holistic health coach. And that's kind of when I was introduced to Ayurveda. Did I say it right?
Yes.
That's when I was introduced to it. And at the time, I was really struggling with gut health and skin issues. And so I bought a couple books and started diving in, and I started embodying some of the practices and felt such a difference. So one thing that I love about Ayurveda, and feel free, Hadlee, to just share like hot tips with us or whatever you feel called to share with our listeners on what this is. I mean, obviously you just get a great overview, but I want to go a little deeper. Something that I love about this, and I would like to hear your opinion on this as well. So first, before actually I say this, can you explain what the doshas are?
Oh yeah, totally. So the doshas are basically, well, a lot of times we look at them as mind body constitutions. And so it's kind of like, okay, if I have, so the three doshas are vata, pitta, and kapha. So vata is, a person who has a vata constitution is someone who tends to be more like thin, maybe tall, they tend to be more creative. They tend to be a little bit more scattered as well. And I like to think of it in terms of the elements. So can I just like break it down in terms of the elements instead? Okay, sweet. So a lot of times it's a lot easier for people to understand this way, because they're like, wait, what does creativity have to do with like thinness and like all? So if you think of the 5 elements, and I usually use my hands for this because there's, we have 5 fingers and the 5 elements. It's really helpful. But basically we have ether, which is kind of like, we can think of it as like space. So, which is slightly different from air. Air is kind of like the movement of space, right? It's like more like wind. So we've got ether, air, fire, water, and earth. Okay, so those are the 5 elements. So vata as a constitution, as a dosha, is the blend of ether and air. So Sarah, you can see obviously the listeners can't see.
Well, if they're watching the YouTube, together, then they can see her.
Okay, cool. Awesome. So you've got the 2, you've got ether and air. And so for vata, like, and I'll just ask you, like, what kinds of qualities would someone who has a lot of air and ether have in their body, but also in their mind, in their emotions, in their spirit?
Probably when I think of like light and airy, I just think of like go with the flow, skip around, like not super like reactive, but just kind of like, oh, okay, cool. Like the very like, I don't even know how to explain it. Like, I don't want to say ditzy because it has a negative connotation, but just like the very open-minded and like, I'm going to skip through life and just be Is that right?
Yeah. And they tend to be super creative, super intuitive,
Mm,
and like pretty tapped into spirituality actually too. So the air and the ether qualities are more subtle. And so you're able to perceive more subtle things. A lot of times people will be more empathic as well. They'll be more impacted by people's energies if they have a lot of vata.
mhm.
The other piece of this is that like everyone has all of these constitutions. So if you're like, well, I'm creative, but I'm not like a lot of the other things, like you have some vata
Got
in
it.
you. So which is why sometimes I'm like, it's not that important what our mind body constitution or our dosha is that we were
Mhm.
born with. A lot of times it's more important which ones are out of balance. And we'll talk a little bit more about that after I like
Yeah.
finish talking about all of them.
Okay, wait, real quick before you move
Yeah.
on, just so that the listeners are clear. So each one of us at birth, we come into this world as mostly either a vata, pitta, or kapha. Is that right?
Yeah, so usually people have like a primary dosha and then a secondary dosha.
Okay.
Some people are tridoshic. Um, and for those people, it just means that um, you have more of a balanced level of all of them, but it also means that sometimes it's harder to figure out which one is out of balance at any given time.
Mhm.
So it's like really easy if you're like just straight up vata to recognize like, okay, is this a vata thing? Like it's probably a vata thing.
Got it.
But not always.
Okay.
So yes,
And
yeah.
then one
So
more
some people
question.
have one, some
Okay.
people have two, some people have three
Got it.
primary. Yeah.
Okay. So then one more question before you explain pitta and kapha. So what you
Yes.
were saying that a vata is like intuitive and light and airy. Do they only like are they only able to fully embody the qualities of being a vata if their vataness is in balance or is balanced? Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah. So yeah, there's like the dark side of each dosha, right? And so in order to really harness the strengths of being vata, you want to be in balance, because when vatas are out of balance, then you've got the ditziness, or you've got the like high stress and anxiety.
Mm,
um you've got low body weight,
mm-hmm.
like too low body
Yeah,
weight. You've got um a lot of like autoimmune conditions
got it.
can have something to do with vata. They can also have something to do with pitta, but which we'll talk about. But yeah, there are a lot of things that that have to do with vata. And I will also say that like most people in our society have a vata imbalance
Okay.
because of the nature of like technology. Because
Mm,
if you think about technology is essentially like like we're talking together, but we're not in the same room. This is like just air, ether elements. Like
got it.
there's nothing tangible about this.
Right.
So like I always think of it as like tangibility to subtlety. You could sometimes they say the word like gross to subtle, but tangibility is sometimes is like a word that people resonate more than gross. So like the elements of earth and water are like super tangible,
Mhm.
whereas like fire, and then you get to air, and then you get to ether, those are like way more subtle.
Got it.
You get more and more subtle as you go.
Cool.
So that's what vata is.
Okay. So the only reason I asked that is just because like I know some people who are vata. And
Mm-hmm.
because I've studied this, and you guys, if this is intriguing, like go follow Hadlee, go start looking into Ayurveda because you can learn so much about it. But I can recognize usually what somebody is, like what their innate dosha is. And I know some people who are vata, but who are not intuitive, like at all. And they're just
Mm,
living from a place of like their conditioned mind and they're not connected to that part of them. But that must be because they are super imbalanced and they're not properly nourishing their mind, body, and soul to
yeah.
have that vata balance.
Totally. Yeah. A lot of times, the feeling, like I always recognize, like I don't have that much vata, but because of the world we're living in, I don't have that much in my constitution, but I will feel once when I start to have a vata imbalance, and it feels like I'm so stuck in my mind, and things are just kind of like swirling around. Essentially, it's like things are just and the direction of things is like kind of like outward and upward and just very dispersed and scattered. So yeah, so then you're not able to tap into that intuition if that's the case for you. You're out of balance. Yeah, totally.
All right, so explain pitta, kapha.
Okay, cool. So pitta, so if you can see my hand, you've got the ether, you've got the air, and that's vata, and then you've got pitta, which is I'm showing as my middle finger, and you have a little bit of water as well. So it's pitta. Pitta is mostly fire and a tiny bit of water. When we get to kapha is water and earth kind of at the same level. But for pitta, it's lots of fire, a little bit of water. And that just the water piece is that like pitta can be somewhat oily, but we won't go super into that.
Well, I mean, I'm literally a pitta, and I'm a perfect example of that. And like when you say oily, like my skin has always been oily. And there you go.
Right,
I'm a pitta.
exactly. There you go. Yes. Yeah. So I have a lot of pitta. I'm primarily pitta, and then I have secondary kapha dosha. So pitta, okay, if you think of fire, like, what do you think of in the qualities of someone who would have a lot of fire element?
Oh, like go, 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 like masculine energy.
Yeah.
Like I'm thinking probably of like the imbalances, but I'm thinking of like reactive and like fiery. Like I don't know how to explain it, but like a very fiery person.
Super intense. Yeah.
Yeah, intense.
Yeah, totally. What about physically?
Well, we already know oily. See, this is where like would they get hot easily? Is that a quality?
Yes. Yeah, totally. Yeah. So getting hot easily, a lot of muscle. So where vata tends to be more like wiry, spindly, you can think of more of like, like a classic like supermodel type body. Though when we get out of balance, we can gain weight or lose weight or whatever it is. But for pitta, they tend to be shorter in stature, very muscular. I'm just like classic pitta. Well, I'm classic pitta kapha actually. But lots of easy to gain muscle, easy to lose muscle too, actually. So it's kind of, if like the mesomorph, ectomorph, and endomorph, this is the mesomorph body type.
I don't know what are those?
Okay, so they essentially, they're kind of like the westernized version of the doshas.
Okay.
So yeah, it's essentially, but it's just like the physical body instead of the mind body constitution. So
this makes sense though, because I'm the same way. Like I'm like literally the definition of pitta with body type.
Right.
Really easy for me to gain muscle, really easy for me to lose it. Like within like literally it takes
yeah, totally. Yeah. Crazy. So and then also like when out of balance, well, pitta tends to also have like a very strong digestive fire, or agni is what it's called. Same, it's very similar to like metabolism, so really strong metabolism. I don't have that as much because I have more kapha constitution in my metabolism, but they tend to be like hungry, like really hungry a lot of the time, unless they're getting nourished in the way that they need to be nourished.
Right.
And when you get out of balance, skin conditions are like acne, of course. Skin conditions tend to be a pitta thing. They can sometimes have vata and kapha qualities, but like redness anywhere, or any inflammation, all of that is pitta. So if you have inflammation in your gut or inflammation in your skin, all of that's gonna be that's gonna be from pitta.
Got it.
So yeah. Yeah, so that's kind of how they get out of balance, and they can get out of balance by being like way too intense. They're like, also being pitta is awesome because you have like this like mental acuity, very sharp, learn things really quickly. They tend to be pretty competitive too. So so which can be a good or a bad thing depending. So yeah, so that is pitta.
Cool.
All right, so then we've got kapha, and kapha is a blend of water and earth. And when you think of like blending water and earth together, what do you get? If you
Well,
just blended water and earth together, what
like
would you
mud?
have? Yes.
Like, is this a trick question?
It's not a trick question. It is like mud. And so kava tends to be like really, really stable, but can get stuck easily, like being stuck in the mud. And so kapha is like the friend who like you just really want to hug from. They're like the teddy bear, or the like the mama dosha. They're very caring. They tend to be, again, very stable, have a lot of endurance. So like I was a long distance swimmer in high school, and like that was my kapha. Just like I could outlast I could outlast anyone. I wasn't like super fast. Like if you're straight up pitta, you're like go really fast, whatever. And but then you can like you tend to get tired faster. And with kapha, it's a little harder to get going. But then once you're going, like try to stop me. It's like basically like once you get the momentum rolling. So it's also that way with inertia. So if the person tends to is kapha, then they might have a hard time getting going on physical activity or like projects, things that they're passionate about, that kind of thing. But they're going to follow through to the end, typically, if you're like a straight up kapha. Out of balance, kapha tends to gain weight, be more sedentary, tends to actually crave more sweets and stuff. Whereas pitta tends to crave like spicy, and vata tends to crave like crunchy things, like popcorn and stuff like that, which all of those things bring them further out of balance, which is kind of a bummer. But yeah, so kapha has a lot of awesome qualities, but a lot of qualities that have been especially demonized in our society. Whereas a lot of times people with pitta constitutions are like revered for being really intense. And people who have kapha constitutions can be criticized for being quote unquote lazy, though I would argue that laziness doesn't exist to the extent that we think it does in our society. And I help my clients a lot with that kind of thing. But yeah, so that is kapha.
So good. Okay. So intriguing. And I know right now our listeners are resonating with this and trying to figure out which dosha they are.
Yes.
But okay. So what I was going to say and why I wanted you to explain that is because I've said this on one other episode before, but body image and wanting a different body is like a huge thing that's in our society right now. Right. And in a little bit, we can talk a little about diet culture, but, what I like to say to people is, and honestly, I was very resistant before I got into healing my relationship to food and my body. I was like really resistant to my body shape because, like you said, vatas are typically that, like the vatas of the world have been chosen to be like the quote unquote models, right? We're seeing that changed a little bit, but once upon a time, however many years ago, whoever was at the head of the advertising firms decided that a Vata, thin body, was going to be the models, which created this whole image and such a clusterfuck with food and body stuff, especially for women. And it, like, from a young age, we are taught to try to have a Vata body, but it's like, if you're a Pitta or a Kapha, that's not your bone structure. I remember, and right? Am I right? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
So like,
Absolutely.
I remember when I was still caught up in diet culture and I was like cutting macros and trying to work out and trying to, like, you know, get my body quote unquote in shape. That's what I thought was in shape at the time. I was taking my Pitta body that I was gifted, obviously for a reason, and I was trying to change it into a Vata body. But looking back, it's like, no matter how hard I would have tried, I would never have, and I still don't, and I will never, but now I've like come to a place of full acceptance and gratitude for this, but I would never be able to get that Vata body. So I feel like there are so many people who are driving themselves nuts trying to diet and exercise and like do all the things to shift their body when really they were born with a Pitta or Kapha body, and there's just no changing that. And I feel like, and obviously if you're a Vata, maybe you feel the same way about Pittas or Kaphas. Like maybe
Right.
you have like, you know, the like a big thing right now is like having a big butt. Maybe you're really, really trying hard to like get a big butt, but like you can't. And it's okay because you're a Vata body. And like and it's just, whenever people like talk about like the body image thing and wanting to be small and wanting to be tiny, I'm like, look up Ayurveda. Like, I'm not a specialist in it. Thankfully you're here, you are, but I'm like, look it up, because you're not like, we're not all supposed to have a Vata body, nor are we all supposed to have a Pitta or a Pitta or a Kapha body. Like, we're all so different and unique in that way.
Right. Yeah, totally. And so also, I'll just make a disclaimer that I'm not like an Ayurvedic practitioner. I'm not like doctor or anything like that in any regard, but yeah, like I help people with kind of the habits that get them into balance into their doshas, right? And so you know, there are habits that I coach people that are universal for everyone, but they can be tweaked to optimize for your specific mind body constitution or your specific dosha, which is really cool. And yes, we are never going to you know, a kapha body is never going to turn into a vata body. A kapha body is always going to have a little bit of extra, like a little bit more fat on it, and probably more muscle than a vata, and like a pitta is going to have more muscle, and like all of that is amazing. And like when you're in balance, you're still going to be, you know, whatever constitution you are born with. I've had people who are vatas like be like, oh my gosh, you're so lucky you're pitta kapha, because you don't have to deal with like as many digestive irregularities, because vata, if you get like a lot of air going on in your system, you're going to have gas and bloating and, you know, all like, and that can create a lot of pain in your digestive system and stuff as well. And so, you know, they're like, oh, you don't have issues with that. And I'm like, yes. And I have issues with sometimes like inflammation. I used to have psoriasis. I've gotten that under control now with diet and lifestyle and everything. But like everyone has a tendency, and that tendency can go out of, when it goes out of balance, it's gonna you know, it's gonna create physical or mental or emotional or spiritual issues. And everyone has a tendency. So like everyone has an issue that they might encounter.
So basically what you're saying is that each one of the doshas, if we're not balanced and nourishing the mind, body, and soul, like our specific dosha requires us to, then each one of the doshas has its own set of problems, and each one of the doshas has its own unique divine gifts.
Exactly. Yeah.
So let's drop the comparison that is also
Right.
so prevalent in the world today, because we are all so unique, and it's literally like we are literally born with this uniqueness. And
Mhm.
we can harness it by learning how to nourish whatever that gift was that was given to us, whether it was Vata, Pitta, or Kapha, or a mix of the
Mhm.
three. So Hadley, will you share with us, like, so you have a program, right, that you take people through that helps them with this kind of stuff?
Yeah, exactly. I have a program that basically we go through the habits of Ayurveda. So Ayurveda is not just about habits. They have like it's this whole like medical system
Mhm.
that goes through like organ care and all of these things. But these specific habits, they kind of identified as like, if you have these habits, every day, your whole life, you're doing these things, you are going to be thriving. You're not really going to go out of balance, essentially, is what it is.
Mhm.
And so, you might be out of balance coming into my program. And so we work on we work on the different habits and stuff. Um, and and then each of those habits, they are universal habits, so everyone needs to do them,
Mhm.
basically, is like what it is. But you can do them slightly differently based on your mind body constitution,
Got it.
and that is like where the secret sauce is.
Okay.
So it's like, for people who are vata body types, one of the habits is exercise, right? And I call it breath body practice because it's syncing your body with your breath, essentially.
Mm.
And anyone can do it, even if you're like in a wheelchair, or even if you're quadriplegic or whatever, you can still breathe, and so
Cool.
you're syncing
Yeah.
your body with your breath.
Love that.
So Vata types are not going to need to do nearly as much like super intense training. If they do, they might injure themselves or they might burn out
Mm.
because they have a more delicate constitution.
Mhm.
Um, Whereas Kapha doesn't need to be doing as much mellow yoga. They
Mm.
might really love the mellow yoga.
Mhm.
And they can do that, and they really need a lot more movement and
Yeah.
more cardio movement,
Mhm.
and that kind of thing. And Pitta tends to love the like really intense stuff,
Mhm.
but that can bring them out of balance too.
Mhm.
So they need to do things that are also going to be restorative,
Got it.
as well. And so we can balance those things out. A, everyone needs a little bit of every kind of exercise, whether it's like hardening, like weightlifting, or softening, like restorative stuff, or cardio. Everyone needs a little bit of each thing, but the amount is going to be different for each constitution as
Got it.
well.
Yeah, so that's such a good one to use. And just coming up for me again, being a pizza. And so those of you who are
Mhm.
pizza or kapha can relate to this, and vata, I'm sure you guys can relate your own ways. But my sister is a vata, like totally a
Mm.
vata. And I always used to say, once again, when I wasn't in this state of acceptance that I am now with my body, I would
Mhm.
always get so irritated that she didn't have to, like, she still doesn't have to work out like at all
Right.
and stay small. Whereas
Mhm.
with me being a pizza, I lose and gain like really quickly. So if I
Yeah.
don't work out for, a while, I can feel like the heaviness in my body, and like I can feel, and I don't even want to say like, I don't even know if I gain weight. I don't own a scale, but I can
Right.
just feel
Same.
extra weight that like, and this hasn't happened in a really long time, but I'm just reflecting on college days. If I didn't go a
Mhm.
couple of weeks without movement, I would have this extra weight that I'm carrying that would be making me feel sluggish and not like my highest self. And I would get so irritated. I'm like, why does my sister not have to work out and she just stays so thin? But it's because she is a vata and I am a pitta, and there's nothing wrong with
Mhm.
that. So,
Yes.
so
I
good.
have the same thing with my sister.
Yeah. So you guys, like, let this
Yes.
seriously be your episode to just like hone in on your dosha, and just know that like there's no changing, right? You can't change your dosha.
Mhm. Right. No,
So
you
just
can't.
learn how to nourish yourself for yours, and then you'll you'll realize the divine gifts that come with that dosha. So will you share like maybe a couple more habits that everybody can do? So exercise, obviously, and like finding your unique exercise and like what feels good for you. What are
Mhm.
some other habits that are like Ayurvedic that everybody could do to feel better and more imbalanced?
Yeah, totally. So, let's see. Well, one of them, I mean, the one that I come back to, like, that is the foundation for everything else is sleep. For all of the constitutions, we need to get sleep. Um, you know, it will bring us out of balance based on like different constitutions if we don't get enough sleep.
Mhm.
Um, for all of them, it's like if you're depleted, if your energy is depleted, um, you're not going to be able to do the other habits basically.
Mm. So
I'm like
good.
I'm so the very first habit that I do with my clients is, well, it's actually not sleep, but it sets us up to be able to go to sleep. So the very first habit that I do with my clients is earlier, lighter dinners.
Mm.
In our current modern culture,
Mhm.
we have pushed our biggest meal of the day until after work,
Mhm.
right? And that happened with the industrial revolution. It used to be that, we would eat our biggest meals at lunchtime. You would wake up with the dawn and, go milk the cows or, do all of the chores and stuff in the morning, come back, eat a big breakfast, go back out, do a bunch of manual labor, come back, eat a big lunch, and then go back out. And then maybe at the end of the day, have like some soup.
Mm.
It's actually why supper is called supper, because it's like supplemental.
Ooh.
And and we actually, lunch used to be called dinner. I remember reading that in like Laura Ingalls Wilder, like Little House on the Prairie books when I was little. I was like, why are they
Yeah.
calling the meal that they're eating at school dinner?
Oh my
Like,
gosh,
that
that's so
doesn't make
interesting.
sense. So, but we just shifted it. We were like, well, we're going into factories now.
Mhm.
So we're gonna go, work until basically, like, I mean, we also didn't have any labor laws. So like until like bedtime, and then we're gonna eat right before bed and go right to sleep. Um, and that has totally messed us up.
Wow.
It makes it so that we can't get the rest, the deep rest and rejuvenation that our body
Yeah.
needs, because our body is busy digesting a bunch of stuff.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm
Yeah.
literally like this episode is in such perfect timing because sleep is like the number one thing that I have been trying to focus on the past few weeks. I wear
Yes.
Fitbit now. I don't know where it's at. It's not on me right now, but I do wear it to bed. And that's because I wanted to be more aware of like what my sleeping patterns were like. And I lose like
Hmm.
an hour of sleep every night. So I could go to bed at like 9 p.m. It's usually like 10. I could go to bed at 10, wake up at 6,
Hmm.
and only get like 6.5 hours of sleep or 7. Even though I'm in
Right.
bed for like 8 or 9, I get way less because I'm losing sleep. So
Hmm.
I'm gonna try it. Earlier, lighter.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. Earlier and later. And a lot of times people are like, what time and how light? And I'm like, you have to experiment with it. You
Right.
have to like base it on, and like you can base it on your constitution too. The cool thing about the doshas are that they help you. They're like kind of just a guiding force for being intuitive. It's
Mm.
like for intuitive eating, for intuitive movement, for intuitive
Mhm.
sleeping, resting.
So good.
um they're just a tool that shows you like, oh, you could try this.
Mhm.
So I'm not like followed like all of the food lists for each dosha or anything
Mhm.
like that. I'm just like, they're a tool to point you in directions to experiment with yourself.
Oh,
um yeah, so earlier lighter dinner is great. For people who are more vata, they're gonna need to eat a little bit more frequently during the day. For people who are more kapha, they don't need to eat as frequently, and
mhm.
they can get away with eating way earlier. In the dead of winter, which is like kapha season, like or like in like January, February, that's like more kapha season. I sometimes eat at like 4 or
Wow.
4:30.
Oh my goodness.
And and then the sun sets at like 4:40, at least on the West Coast.
Yeah.
And I'm fine until I go to bed because I have a lot of kapha constitution as well.
Got it.
So yeah, so experiment and allow the doshas to guide you in that experimentation. Yeah.
And you guys, if this is intriguing to you, which I know it is, go check out Hadlee's page. We'll talk about all that at the end. We'll tell you where you can find her. But she has, your program's like what, 12 months, right? An entire year. Yeah.
Yep, it's a whole year. Yeah.
So you can go really, really deep into all of this. So good. Okay. Is there any last remarks you want to say on Ayurveda or the doshas?
I would just say allow them to be a pointer for you. Don't treat them as gospel, because a lot of times we kind of bastardize them in our Western model of like, oh, okay, I'm pitta, so I should eat all pitta foods. I should do all pitta activities. I should do this. Like, so I had a kapha imbalance as a kid. I actually initially thought that I had a kapha constitution, but it was just because I had a kapha imbalance for a really long time. And so I like got my kapha imbalance under control once I learned about all of this stuff, but then my pitta just like went nuts. And so I totally burnt out, and had like all of these things happen. So just allow them to be pointers for you, but realize that like they're there in order to help you to be more intuitive, not to play into diet culture, not to play into like categorizing everything. Just allow them to help you with it, but gently.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a great segue into the myth of diet culture. So as you know, I have an entire program called Diet Culture Dropout.
Yes.
So this is like one of my favorite topics to talk about, because if there's one thing that activates me and like triggers me, that don't worry guys, like I go through the framework and I work through it. But at the same time, there's one of my favorite mentors, David Elliott. He's a breathwork like god. And he always says like, you want creativity, take the things you're angry about, add love to them, and boom, you're creative. And so that's what I do with the diet culture, because diet culture creates that anger and I add love to it and I create a program like Diet Culture Dropout. So what are your thoughts on diet culture? And like, you mentioned the myth of diet culture. Just give us a couple of words on that and like what your beliefs are there.
Yeah, totally. So I love to kind of use Ayurveda again as a tool for breaking out of diet culture, because it's really helpful to start to just get curious about like how different things impact our bodies, instead of relying on rules or even relying on like societal norms, different things like that. I'm so against diet culture. I've done many workshops on this. And it's like, it just completely warps our relationship with food so that we can't get into balance with our constitutions. And the more we push ourselves to do the things that we think we quote unquote should do, the more out of balance we get. And then a lot of times the more we will kind of like a rubber band kind of like snap back into that like being out of balance, because we basically go from like a state of imbalance to another state of imbalance. It's not like we're going from, so like if you think about like the deprivation binge cycle, we're going from an imbalance for, if it's deprivation, an imbalance of like vata, too much space, too much spaciousness, and air and ether, to the binge cycle, which is too much kapha. It's too much fullness. And so, and then we don't feel this sense of balance. And I mean, I am a huge fan of like the pulsation of like emptiness to fullness, but not being so far on the spectrum where you're like way too empty, way too full, and going between those things.
Yeah, right. And if you tie that back to Ayurveda, then it makes complete sense, because what you said at the beginning was Ayurveda is all about balancing mind, body, and soul, nourishing mind, body, and soul. And you said something at the beginning of this, and I can't remember your exact words, but you were like, the goal is to be balanced so you can feel blissful. So tying it back to the diet culture, that makes sense if you're tying diet culture to Ayurveda, as to why, when you are in that state of being in a diet or being on a diet or depriving yourself or restricting or whatever it is, counting calories, if you are depriving, or on the opposite end, if you're binging, you feel like shit. Like your emotions are everywhere and you don't feel blissed out at all. So it makes complete sense. Like it ties in perfectly with that.
Well, and the other thing that I'll say is like, I used to binge eat also. So like that was my kapha. I had a huge kapha imbalance because that was like my path as well, where it was like, I knew all of the like I grew up, my parents were super health conscious, and like, you know, I knew well, not all of the things. I knew the typical wellness model in our society. You know, like exercise and eat the way you're quote unquote supposed to eat. And maybe like get enough sleep. Maybe, though that was definitely low on my priority list. But I knew those things, but I wasn't doing them. I was you know, I would try really, really hard to do the things and then like completely burn out because I was trying too hard. And I said that that it was kind of like too much spaciousness. It's also too much pitta because it's too much mental forcing. It's too much of that masculine energy. That's a lot of pitta is related to that, and too much just like I'm forcing myself into this. And then you have the opposite end of the spectrum, which is like the kapha of I'm just giving everything up and I'm just gonna eat everything and not move at all, and I'm just gonna, you know, let go of anything. So
good. So you guys, basically moral of that is stop dieting and instead put your intention and focus on healing your relationship to food in your body, and everything else falls into place when you do that. So good.
It's
all right.
So cool how it does.
I know, it really, really is. So Hadlee, how about some rapid fire questions? Are you down?
I'm so down.
Okay. So you guys, these aren't going to be like the typical rapid fire questions we do. I wanted to do a little bit more like wholesome ones with Hadlee, since I know she has a lot to give. So first and foremost, we do ask everybody this one, but what is your morning routine? We are huge morning routine fans here. You know this. And it's so fun to hear about everybody else's morning routine. So what does yours look like?
So that's one of the habits that I coach my clients in. Yes. That's habit number 3, because I believe that it is like not sustainable to do a morning routine if you haven't gotten the sleep that you need. So like we start with the early lighter dinners so that we can go to bed earlier so that we can then have the morning routine. So so I wake up, I brush my teeth, I scrape my tongue. That's another Ayurvedic thing.
Yeah, I used to do that.
Yeah, so love that. I actually have a friend in Seattle whose dentist, like in the little goodie bag they gave them, had a tongue scraper in it.
Amazing.
I'm like, it's becoming mainstream. Seattle mainstream, but still mainstream.
Okay, wait. So you scrape your tongue after you brush your teeth?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Some people say that you should before you brush your teeth. I like to do it after because my mouth just feels kind of gross. So I brush my teeth and then I scrape my tongue. And then I drink warm water. I heat up my water while I'm brushing my teeth. And then I do my meditation. So that changes based on how much time I have and what I feel like I'm needing that morning, whether it's going to be like a silent meditation or a guided one, or what kind of guided one. Sometimes if I'm feeling too intense, too pitta, like too focused on like over focused on my goals or over focused on like dumb stuff like to-dos or whatever, I do meditations that are going to help me to like open up my space more, or open up my mind more. Whereas, you know, if I'm feeling really scattered, I'll do some sort of meditation that's going to be more focused. So that's again how we can use our doshas to figure out what kind of meditation we even want to do. And then I always work out in some way. I mean, this morning it was foam rolling, but a lot of time I love going to the gym. And I just went back to the gym like last week, and I've been so excited. So I love weightlifting, and doing like high intensity interval training. I have a lot of kapha again in my constitution, so I need a lot of high intensity stuff. And then I shower and I do self massage, and that's actually another habit that I coach my clients in, which can be dry brushing. So using kind of like a skin brush essentially on your skin, like up and down on your arms and kind of in circular motions on like your trunk. And then or I will do oil, like just sesame oil on my skin, or coconut oil in the summer. And then I get my day started. Usually I make a green smoothie, and have something else with it because I've just worked out. So I really need some more food than just a green smoothie.
So that sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's great.
Oh, I love it. Okay. So next question, since you are a meditator, is what is like one of your favorite meditations? So when I ask you that, what comes to mind?
I love body-based meditations. So Katie Silcox, I feel like I maybe have mentioned her to you guys or to you before, but to everyone else, Katie Silcox, she has a podcast, and she also has like some different, she has like, it's called The Lineage of Love. And I think it's like a subscription thing, where she has a bunch of different body-based meditations. I really like them because we all have vata imbalances basically in our society, and we're just like so like air and ether. It helps us to regulate our nervous systems a lot to do body-based meditations. And what that means is essentially, you know, it can be a body scan. So just bringing your awareness throughout the different parts of your body. It can also be like meditating. This is a thing that Katie Silcox does, guides you through a meditating on your bones, and specifically your bones in relation to the your space around you as well. So it's you're orienting yourself to your bones, but you're also orienting yourself and your bones to the space around you. So how far away is the wall from you? How far away is the other wall from you? And just kind of like really orienting yourself in space. And that's super, super awesome for regulating our nervous systems. And that's my favorite.
That sounds amazing. So good.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's say you wake up, you do your morning routine, you get to work, and then all of a sudden, like midday, you kind of feel like you're in a funk or in a slump. What's a practice that you like to do to get you back into alignment with your highest self and like back into the flow?
Yes. Shaking.
Ooh, so
yeah.
good.
So if you ever see like, I'll take the example of like ducks. So if you ever see ducks get into a fight, and then they'll like swim away from each other, and they'll like shake their feathers off, and then they're fine. It's like they have nothing, they don't even remember it. So when we shake things out of our system as animals, it helps to actually move our emotions through our bodies. And it also helps to stimulate our lymphatic system. So like getting the toxins out of our body, getting that stagnancy out of our bodies. And it helps to get more oxygen through our bodies to our limbs and everything, which helps to bring more mental clarity as well. So just shaking my body out, like literally like shaking everything.
I love it. Yes, that is so good. I always, whenever I'm facilitating breathwork, I cue people to shake, and I'm shaking usually throughout my entire breathwork practice, and it feels so
Yes,
nourishing.
I love it.
Me
Yeah, it's the
too. Okay,
best.
so I want to know, what's your favorite meal to prep? And then what's your favorite meal to like cook? Like if you and Todd have, Todd's her fiance, by the way. I think
Mm,
she mentioned that.
yes.
If you and Todd have like a night and you're going to cook a meal that you can take time with,
Mm.
I want to know your favorite. So to prep and to cook.
Okay, so prepping, I basically just like make bowls a lot.
Mhm.
The ingredients of them change a ton. But it'll be some sort of green, and I love to switch up my greens.
Mhm.
It'll be sometimes it's a couple greens. It'll be some sort of grain or bean, or sometimes animal protein. Am like usually don't eat that much animal protein, but some. Um, or it can be like pasta. I usually do like rice pasta or lentil pasta or something like that. Um, and I throw that together with like a bunch of different vegetables, whatever vegetables I'm feeling. And then I'm all about like sauces. I love olive oil. And I kind of grew up with the belief that like you're supposed to do as little sauce as you possibly can on everything, as little dressing, as little whatever, because like diet culture. And now I'm like, give me all of the olive oil. Like, let me put
That's
all of it on
awesome.
there.
How freeing, right? I remember
Right.
when I finally like realized that I made the shift from worrying about how much fat and calories is in a tablespoon of olive oil to not giving
Yeah.
a shit. Like Zach and I have been making homemade pesto. And it's so
Yes.
funny
Love
because
it.
I always tell our listeners too, like the demons will still come up in the mind. It's just, are you going to
Hmm.
listen to them? Because
Right.
it takes years and years to actually shift. So it's so funny. We'll be making pesto and you put like an entire cup of olive oil into the food processor for this pesto that makes like 4 meals. And I can hear the mind in me
Hmm.
being like, holy shit, that's a lot of olive oil. But then the highest self comes up and is like, eat all the pesto you want, girl.
Totally. Yes. When Todd and I would make hummus like back in the day when I was like coming out of like the diet culture
Yeah.
mindset, he would always be like, I think I just need to make the hummus because you just don't add. And it was just like so dry. I'm like, but I put a ton of olive oil in there, and because we never really like measure stuff, so
Yeah.
I'm like, I feel like I put like a whole bottle's worth, and he's like, no, you didn't, you still didn't put enough.
That's awesome.
So yeah, so now I'm just like, I add all the olive oil. I'm a big fan of making like fun sauces and stuff to switch it
Mhm.
up, because I make like a lot of very similar things with just different types of ingredients, but just having like a bowl like that. So it's
Mhm.
fun to switch it up with different sauces too.
I love it.
So I
Okay.
love
So
that.
then what about your favorite meal to like actually cook if you're going to take time and spend time cooking it?
Yeah, we really like to experiment with different recipes. Like I um so because I make like pretty much the same meal of different variations of the same meal like most days of the week, I really like to come up with like do a different recipe and like follow a different recipe.
Yeah.
So we have this one cookbook um called Milk Street, the new the new rules, and it's like the new rules of cooking. And they, oh my gosh, I am such a big fan of that cookbook. It's taught me so much of like how to make food taste so
Oh my
freaking good.
gosh. I'm gonna have to check that
So
out.
yeah, you should. It's they have like different like tips throughout the cookbook that'll say like um you different like use, oh, one of the tips was like use herbs as greens in your dish. Like
Mm.
literally like basil was like the greens for this salad that we made, and it was
Wow.
so
Oh
good.
my gosh.
Um different things like that that are just like, oh my gosh. or like put the butter in at this time, or put the olive oil in at this time, or whatever. And it just like makes such a big difference.
What's it
So
called?
highly recommend. It's called The New Rules.
We'll link it.
I feel like Christopher Kimball is the name of the author.
Okay.
Yeah, Todd's sister Casey, who also has a podcast,
Cool.
gave it to me for Christmas. So
Okay.
we love to make recipes out of there. So yeah.
Love it. Okay. So next question is, what's your favorite place that you've ever traveled to? Best place, most unique place, most fun, like where do you love to travel?
I think the best place or my favorite place was Malaysia. That was really cool. That was like in 2018, I think. We went for Thanksgiving. It was the same price to fly back to Michigan for Thanksgiving as it was to fly to Asia. So from Seattle. So we were like, sorry, mom and dad. They were like, we understand, it's fine.
Wow.
Like, we'll see you soon. So we went to Malaysia, and that was incredible. Oh my gosh, it was the best food I've ever had in my life. Like, our Airbnb, it was off of this little tiny island, and they would we went and caught fish, and we went and like raked up clams in the when the tide was low and stuff, and they just cooked it up for us.
Oh my gosh, how cool.
It was so cool. And like they would like barter with the neighbors for like mangoes. And so the food was just the freshest food I ever had. And then we I still was doing some work, so I did my calls like in a hammock, and
oh my gosh, that sounds amazing.
Awesome. Yeah.
So good. All right. Last question. This was not on there, but I threw it on there. So you're a theater kid.
I was, yes.
What's your favorite play that you've ever done or been in?
Okay, my favorite was Midsummer Night's Dream, which is Shakespeare. I was Hermia, which I got to have two guys who were in love with me, and then I got to also get in a stage fight, which was kind of fun.
Oh, that sounds like a blast. Wow.
Yes. But the funniest part I ever had was I was Charlie in Willy Wonka when I was a senior in high school.
Love that. Oh my gosh, how freaking fun. I always think about how fun it would be to be an actress.
Oh, so fun. I love it. Yeah, I miss it. I want to do more of it.
Wow. I thought there was actually one more thing that came up, but I can't think of it now. So, Hadlee, where can our listeners find you? Can they get more information on your program and everything that you have to offer? Yes.
So Happy Healthy Hadlee is pretty much my name everywhere. And Hadlee is spelled with two E's, Hadlee. But happyhealthyhadlee.com, or my Instagram is just Happy Healthy Hadlee. My Facebook page, I think, is Happy Healthy Hadlee as well. And if you go to my website, you can sign up I do 30-minute calls with people to kind of get a sense of whether they would actually be a good fit if you are interested in potentially working with me. And yeah, or DM me or whatever, connect.
Perfect. So guys, we'll also link all of that in the show notes. And actually, okay, one more question.
Yes.
Because I thought of it when you said you could book a call to see where you're at. How do people find out? Like, aren't there tests to find out what dosha you are?
Oh yeah. The one that I usually use with like my clients, and the one I usually recommend is Banyan Botanicals. BANYAN.
Okay.
And then botanicals.com. And they have like Ayurvedic products and stuff as well, but they have a really good quiz. One thing I will say about their quiz is, for some reason, and I think it has something to do with diet culture, a lot of times people will get kapha higher in their constitution than I usually think that they are, or that they later realize that they are. And I think it's because they tend to answer the questions thinking that they are more kapha than they are. So keep that in mind.
Okay, so good to know. All right, so we'll link that as well. Hadlee, thank you so much for coming on. This episode was amazing. I cannot wait to re-listen, take notes, and I'm so excited to start implementing some of these things with Ayurveda and see how it changes things. So thank you so much for gifting us with your presence and all of your wisdom today.
Yay, thank you so much for having me on. I'm so excited to be here and chatting with you.
You're
So
so welcome. You guys go check out Hadlee, go follow all of her things, and we will talk to you guys next week. Bye.